Hey there, everyone. I'm just making one little quick technical adjustment here to make sure I don't go off the air. I hope you had a great week last week and a fun weekend. And let's see. Let me do this real quick. There we go. Haha. Little technical glitch there. Switched from one network to another. So we're off and running. I hope you had a great weekend last weekend, and yeah, we had a lot of rain. We had almost 3 inches of rain here in the Kansas City area, and it was, I guess, much needed. I haven't been here that long, so and I'm getting ready to head out this weekend. It's starting to get cold here in eastern Kansas and western Missouri, so it'll be next week when I broadcast. It will should be from the Memphis area. So anyway, it should be fun. It's on my journey or southbound for the winter. Hey Addie, thanks for joining in. And this week had an interesting email last week that I wanted to follow up on, and and I've had a couple of emails in the past couple of months that have had uh, similar comments about giving up on dating quickly. You know, a gal reached out to me and asked, said she was on a dating site for about 3 months and was overwhelmed with a number of responses that she got. She had 6 dates, which is awesome. And the she said she just got so overwhelmed with it, she quit, and she just started dating the sixth guy, even though she knew it wasn't and she quickly realized that it wasn't a good match. She kept dating him for a while, but it just became laborious, and now she doesn't want to get back online, and it she came across as having the attitude that like so many people that think that it should be, meet 4 or 5 or 6 people and you just meet the right one magically, and it just doesn't happen that way. And I know for some of you already recognize that, but for others it's like a shock to the system. And dating, for those of us that are in our 50s and 60s, and dating isn't the same as it used to be. We have far greater choices. We have far greater opportunities to meet people, to connect with people. Just look at your Facebook page. Some of you have two, three, 400 people that like you, and that's on the low end. I'm kind of on the mid range. I've got about 2,000 people that are Facebook friends. Do I know most of them? Not at all. There's probably a handful that I could talk to and have a great conversation with at any given time. So so again, our ability to connect with people is so much greater than it was before. And when you look at social, hey Shar, thanks for joining in. Glad to see you're with us tonight. And Shar is in St. Paul. You made the move from North Carolina back to the almost Great White North. So anyway, it's the the point here is that dating is an ongoing process, and as I said, are you a dating wimp or are you a dating superhero? And one of my followers, Terry, said that she doesn't she doesn't give up. She just takes a break from time to time, and that's awesome. That's you know when you're dating, it does get overwhelming after a while, and we have to do dating with a proper attitude. If you're thinking it's drudgery, if you're thinking that it's work, if you're thinking that it's no fun, oh Lord, I have to go out on another first date or just another date. Why can't I find the man of my dreams? Why can't I find the woman of my dreams? Well, it's part of that is because we've had so many life experiences. It's not like we were dating back when we were, in our late teens and early 20s. We didn't know what we didn't know. And let's see, Addie says, "Yep, I like Terry Ann, or I'm like Terry Ann. I don't give up, but I do take breaks. Um, you have to, otherwise you'll end up settling." Exactly right, and or you'll burn out and just not end up with anyone. I had a gal that reached out to me a few weeks ago, and she was divorced for 27 years, and still struggling to get past the hurt and the pain of that relationship. So there's a lot of things that can keep you out of the dating world, and there has to be a there has to come a point in time where you let the past go. What do when you hang on to something that long, what are you gaining from that? I mean, you're obviously getting something out of it, whether it's a sympathy, or oh, there's a word that I'm looking for that it's just evading me right now. It's you're gaining some attention, or it's giving you something emotionally. Whether it's maintaining the anger towards an ex, or whatever it is. What is that giving you? What is that getting you? What benefit do you receive out of it? And then the flip side of that question is, what are you missing by hanging on to that anger and hanging on to that upset, and by not moving on? There's because there is that too. When you hang on to anger and negativity, and I guess the victim, you play the victim. You get to get a lot of sympathy. Oh, poor sweet girl. You were wronged, and you can carry that on and on and on. But again, it's keeping you stuck. And maybe it's that particular type of attention is doing something for you. Maybe it's filling some missing link of self-esteem. But whatever it is, if you want to move on in this world, if you want to move on in today's world of dating, you've got to dump that load. You've got to get rid of it, and start fixing whatever issues are up here in your head. And when you do that, then you can start moving forward again. You can start dating, you can start meeting people, you can start becoming comfortable with who you are, and not playing the "oh, woe is me" card. Addie says, more than likely they are folks that always have some sort of drama because they crave it. Just my opinion. And Addie, that you probably hit the nail on the head, that at least most of the people that I've met that have a lot of drama in their life are their own worst enemy. They create as much drama in their life as they try to avoid, or they claim they try to avoid drama, and yet they always seem to be in the midst of something going on in their lives that just it's just constant turmoil. And so, you dating is not that it's work, but it's not that difficult. It's not rocket science. It's Addie says, yeah, they claim to avoid the drama. And that's and somebody said not too long ago that I was reading somebody's profile, or reading an article on profiles. And said, yeah, drama free. Well, none of us is drama free. We've all, or I'm not carrying any baggage into a new relationship. Well, let me tell you, you are carrying baggage, because that baggage creates who you are. It's created the person you are today. It's the experiences. That baggage creates experiences. It creates knowledge. It creates emotions that either we want to repeat or we don't want to repeat. So, there's I always get a little bit gun shy whenever I see someone write on their profile, must be drama free, or that they're drama free, because there's always going to be something that pops up in life, and it's going to create some drama. It's going to create some friction, but that's all part of life. But back to the subject at hand. I was kind of veering off veering off course there. One of the things that I found with dating in working with folks over the last 8 or 10 years is that you've got to have your expectations right from the beginning. When you set unreal expectations, and I'm not talking about your must have or your deal breaker list, but the about how dating should work, about how dating goes, about only having to date a handful of people. And some of you have heard this time and time again, that if you're looking for your extraordinary mate or a soulmate relationship, you need to be looking for that needle in a haystack. And it's going to take more than two or three or four or five pieces of straw before you find that needle. And it applies to dating. It's going to take more than 4 or 5 or 6 dates, dating different people. Hey, Geneva, thanks for joining in. Glad to see you're here. It's going to take dating more than a handful of people to find your soulmate. And sometimes, and part of it is you'll meet somebody that seems really good to begin with, and you'll start dating them. You might date them for 6 months, a year, maybe 2 years, and then something, just things start to unravel, or in the back of your mind you're thinking, oh, maybe this isn't quite the relationship I'm looking for. And sometimes we delay saying goodbye or walking away from those relationships. So if you're going to have some of those experiences, but the experiences, that when you spend 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years with somebody, and that time has mostly been either trying to make them into somebody that they aren't, or you're trying to mold them into the person you think they could be, or you just settled. You're settling for less, and hoping that they will be the one that magically ignites your fire. But if you don't sense that early on, then there's a good possibility that they're not the one. If you have to work really hard to try to make this relationship work. Hey, Jeannie, thanks for joining in tonight. Thank you. Jeannie says, nice shirt. And Addie says, "Ha! If I was lucky, I'd win the Powerball tonight too." Well, uh, yeah, and I saw something where it was like $999 million, but I heard that it's somewhere over 1.2 or 1.5 billion dollars. I don't know. Hey Phil, thanks for joining in. Phil says, "Hey Rick, sometimes dating feels out of date. I was married 25 years, and now exclamation point. Um, it does, but Phil, and part of that comes from, we're still expecting dating to be the way it was when we were in high school or when we were in college. And when you approach dating from that perspective, it is going to feel out of date. There's so many aspects of dating right now that that weren't available when you and I were in high school or college or even in our mid 20s. There's there's the internet for one thing. I I digress, but I remember when a calculator was having a calculator in high school was a big deal. So that's how far back I go. And people today, they look at you got calculators in these goofy things. And so uh, technology has advanced so much. We can communicate with each other. I don't know if how many of you remember some of the early Star Trek movies when Captain Kirk would flip open his communicator, the flip phone, the old flip phones, and those are starting to come back. Uh, but that's the per are these are science things of science fiction. The personal communicators. You can talk to virtually anyone, anywhere, anytime, and we have to recognize how much society has changed. Norms have changed, although some of them not for the better. That's there's I, and a couple of things come to mind in I'm thinking about creating a couple of real short videos for guys on how to treat a woman like a lady. Some simple things like uh, the guy walking on the curb side of the sidewalk. That's a common gesture, and it comes and it goes way back to basically the horse and buggy days, where or the early motor car or motor buggy days, when they'd come driving by and hit a puddle and splash you. So a gentleman would naturally walk on the curbside or on the roadside of the sidewalk, so he could protect his lady or his date. Asking a woman out on by Wednesday for a date on Saturday. What's wrong with that? And it's do it with a phone call or in person as opposed to texting. Texting is such an anonymous and non, I guess for lack of better terms, a non-threatening form of communication. Because you don't there's not a tone of there's not a voice on the other end. There's some letters, some words. You send them out and some come back. It's very, oh, another word I'm missing. There's just a lack of connection there. Granted, it's the most minimal form of communication there is. Calling somebody on the phone and asking for a date. And I saw another comment online today, and I was on just cruising through Facebook, and somebody had made comment about teaching men how to be gentlemen. That's kind of what prompted some of this conversation, is that she said she was complaining that guys tend to say, "Hey, you want to go hang out?" As opposed to, "Would you like to go out for dinner?" Or, "Can I take you out for a nice dinner? Can I take you, can we get together for coffee or cocktails?" Um, Addie says, "Oh, Rick, please do make those videos regarding chivalry and proper dating etiquette. Uh, that for me is the bare minimum that men can do." Absolutely. And there was one gal had a whole list of things that she would like for the guy she dates to do, and one of them was poetry. And I was all in for everything on the list except poetry. And to write a poem, oh my God, that's like that's worse than gifts. The love language of gifts, to me, that's poetry. I couldn't tell you a good poem from a bad one. And for me to even try to pick one out, because somebody made comment, well, just pick one out and send it to her. And Addie says, if a man wrote a poem to me, I would laugh. Yeah, there you go. And so it's but there are so many things that we all can do to be a better date, or to date better. And that's my whole goal, is to help people make better decisions about the people they date and the relationships they get into. That's what it all boils down to. There's way too much divorce. There's way too many um, dysfunctional relationships. There's just way too many problems in dating, and we shouldn't be making it that hard. Whether it's because we're lonely and want to avoid being alone on the weekend, or whether it's self-esteem issues that you have to be with someone, or whatever it is. It's there are any number of reasons, but sometimes we just make it so hard. We allow ourselves to get overwhelmed with messages online. And that's one of the things that I teach about online dating, is that, and especially for the ladies. I don't know of any guys that really get overwhelmed with messages, but ladies, you typically do, especially your first time on dating sites. You get hundreds, if not 1,000 or so, in the first couple of months of being online, and it's like, holy crap, I can't handle all this. Well, number one, if you're spending a lot of time trying to answer each one, uh, think again. Number one, you shouldn't be spending any more than 30 to 60 minutes a day online. Otherwise, you end up with what they call shopper's fatigue. It's like, at the end of the day, when you're out shopping, you've been out for a whole day, and by the end of the day, 4:30, 5 o'clock, nothing looks good, nothing seems to fit right, nothing, whatever you're looking for just isn't on the racks or on the shelves, and you're starting to get frustrated. And it's time to move on and do something else. The same thing happens with dating. If you spend 2 or 3 or 4 hours a night going through profiles, and it just becomes work. It becomes a chore, and it's you know you spend 8 hours a day at work, and then another 3 or 4 online. Oh my God, that's a that's a recipe for burnout right there. So I never recommend spending more than 30 to 45 minutes a day online. And ladies, don't think that you have to answer every message that comes in. Number one, in you probably are aware of this, but you've sent messages out and not received any reply. I know I've sent out a ton of messages and never hear a peep from them. Why? Well, because they're probably overwhelmed with messages from other people. You know, the, you have to create a tagline or a headline or a subject line that stands out from the rest. But beyond that, there's if somebody's overwhelmed, they just may not they just may not see your message. And don't get upset with them because they don't respond. I have a lot of guys come to me and say, I hate online dating because all women are egotistical, and they think that they don't need to respond. And well, no, they don't need to respond. This is a different world of dating, and and one of the aspects of online dating is that you don't know who's a paying member and who's not. And if you don't know who's a paying member, you can send message after message after message, but they're not going to see it. And if they do, they can't reply to you. So there's there are so many variables in here. It's everything from being over, the person that you're writing to is overwhelmed with messages and can't keep up. It could be that they're not a paying member and can't answer it. And some sites are a little bit on the deceptive side and will keep people's posts up, and they may not even be on the site anymore. So and sometimes that's a fault of the person that was on there. They don't take their post down or their profile down. They just stop paying and they go on, and they may be in a relationship, and that's okay. But don't get upset if you send out 20 emails and maybe get one response, or a handful of responses. It's you don't know what the other person's situation is. You don't know what's going on in their life. You don't know if they've had to step away from online dating because of a family emergency and it's the last thing on their mind. So don't get upset when somebody doesn't respond to you. Just take the attitude of next. And and I've had experiences where I've reached out to somebody and for 3 or 4 weeks didn't get a response, and all of a sudden this is, oh, Rick, I'm so sorry, I was tied, my father was in the hospital, or there was some family emergency and they were tied up, and I had one woman tell me her mother had passed away, and it's like, oh, that's heartbreaking. So now I understand why you're not why you're not responding. And I always try to be pretty kind. Addie says, I was on Hinge, put in all must preferences, and was super honest and upfront of what I'm looking for, while maintaining positivity, and haven't got any messages. I'm honestly okay with that, because I don't want to have to take time to respond to or Xing through them. And then she says, my question is, and maybe others can answer, but why would you be on a site and not a paying member, or to be able to read or respond to messages? Well, I can answer that because I've been on both sides of that equation, and a lot of times, Addie, most people just want to see who's out there. And there are some sites that will allow women to respond, but not men. And so, from that perspective, it is just a way to see who's out there. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes, you can actually find out who the person is. I was running through profiles. This was several years ago, and I saw a woman on there, and she gave enough clues to who she was that I was able to look her up, and I could actually reach out to her and share a couple of of errors she was making in her profile that allowed guys to find out exactly who she was. And she was a fairly high-powered person in a financial firm that probably needed to take a little more time and a little more thought into creating her profile and keeping her personal information safe. So if that's the case, they really aren't seriously looking. Probably not. And Addie, that's, if you're not and sometimes it's a matter of finances, but it's more than likely it is a situation where they're not totally serious, and that's a great point. And if you're going to be doing online dating, you might as well pay for the service, and you do get what you pay for. There are a couple of not, I don't want to say nonprofit, but there are a couple of sites that are free to users, and they sell their advertising, and those sites I would just avoid like the plague, because those are the sites that are really going to have the lowest quality people. And there are going to be some okay people on there, but odds are that you're just not going to find your soulmate on the free sites. And you don't have to take a 6-month subscription or a 1-year subscription. Do it for 3 months and then take a break, and then in a month or two go back for 3 months. It's you don't have to invest every day, every waking hour at finding your soulmate. Although I was talking to a guy, and this was probably a little over a year ago, and he was telling me that he spent about 90% of his free time looking for his soulmate. And I was thinking, wow, that's a lot of time. But the reality is he found her, and within a few months of telling me that, and he's already married. And from what I can tell, it's a very happily married, and so you do have to invest time. And it's, hey Suzanne, thanks for joining in. And it's not necessarily having to be online. It's about being out and social. It's you can, and I was having a conversation with a friend this weekend about dating in meetup groups, and that gets a little bit difficult because it's a great way to meet people, and I highly recommend it. But to date within the group becomes a little awkward, because odds are the relationship is going to end, and then it just then there are rumors, and there are comments, and sometimes it can get really ugly. But for me personally, I have a group of over 5,400 people, and those that show up, I've made some very, very good friends, and the friends that I can actually go out and do things with. And Suzanne says it's when they build you up and then ghost you. Worse yet, fraudulent fake profiles that lead you along, then try to extort you. If it's too good to be true, it is. Absolutely. And that's brings up another great point about online dating, Suzanne, is that you have to be responsible for the people that you talk to. You have to have your antenna up when you're responding to somebody, or when somebody reaches out to you. And if they're and as far as the ghosting, they that can yank at your chain. I understand that, but that's one of those that's one of those things that if they ghost you, and I've had that done several times, so I know what it's like. I've been there, I've done it. It's like, okay, well, that wasn't the quality of person that I'm looking for anyway. So it's, if you don't have the courtesy to say, hey, I'm starting to see somebody else. I don't think, I'm just not feeling a connection with you. If you can't do that, then then uh, then don't be there. That's another one of those, and it goes both ways. It's not just guys doing it to women. It's women doing it to guys too. Because I've been ghosted several times. We seem to be having a great conversation, and all of a sudden, nothing, no response, no, and a couple of people I've actually had additional contact with, and found out that they're really flaky people. And there are people that think the world revolves around them. And I don't know about all of you, but I I don't want to be with somebody like that. That's too much work. That's a really high maintenance person to me. And yes, my world will revolve around yours, but yours should also revolve around mine. This it needs to be a two-way street. So it's, but I hope that, Suzanne, I hope that strikes a chord with you a little bit. That 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 being ghosted, some people just don't have the common courtesy anymore that most of us, that folks, let's put it this way, folks my age, mid 60s, grew up with. You learn to tell the truth, or maybe you didn't. Maybe being honest with someone isn't in your wheelhouse. I don't know. But whatever it is, it needs to, we need to be responsible for checking these things out. Um, and she said, it's rude. I don't contact them again. Absolutely. And it is rude. And when somebody is like that, the first words out of your mouth should be next. It's because you shouldn't be wanting somebody that can just disappear on it at the drop of a hat and then maybe show up sometime later, maybe. Uh, but then again, it is still our responsibility to ferret these things out. It's our responsibility, or your responsibility, when you're dating, or when you're on an online site, to be able to start telling when somebody's blowing smoke, or when somebody is being deceitful. They may be showering you with all kinds of flowery words and praise, and just telling you how much they want to get together. But then there's always something that comes up that doesn't allow them to to make your appointed meeting, or your appointed get together. And if it happens, literally, if it happens, you should very quickly become skeptical. Because that's one of the key traits of a scammer, is they're never able to get together, and they're generally long distance relationships, not always, but generally. And it's still upon you to have the common sense and good judgment to say, yeah, something doesn't feel right here. And like Suzanne says, if it feels too good to be true, it is. Addie says, I've ghosted someone recently only because he ended up being disrespectful after I gave him warnings. I owed him nothing. Oh, I'm not saying that ghosting in all situations is a bad thing. You gave him, especially if you gave him warnings, and if he was being disrespectful, then by all means cut him off and just say, I'm done, and you don't even have to tell him why. You know, he should, if he can't figure it out, if he can't tell that that he was being disrespectful, then by all means it's time for him to hit the trail. And ghosting is, and you know, however you call it, I just call it breaking off all contact, blocking them on social media, blocking them on your phone, blocking them on dating sites, and wherever you may have contact, and even blocking them on email. And so consequently, you don't have to deal with the disrespect anymore, and just move on. But today's term is ghosting. I just say block them. You know, it's there are some situations where that is appropriate, and in other situations where you're in the middle, you can be in the middle of a conversation and all of a sudden they're gone. They may ghost you on social media, and just, okay, what happened there? I don't know. I'm left scratching my head. It's you know it, and that's where the lack of respect, or um, lack of moral values comes in, I guess. That you treat people with respect, and if they treat you wrong, then say, oh, I'm done, I'm out. If they you know But if they're respecting you, if they're listening to you, and they correct the errors in their ways, then great, keep going. But if it's in Addie's case, if he's disrespectful and he ignored warnings, nah, that's not somebody that you need to continue to have in your circle of acquaintances. Okay, so any questions, thoughts, concerns? It's been a you guys have had some great comments, and it's dating, again. Dating doesn't have to be a chore. It doesn't have to be drudgery. It doesn't have to be. It can be tough at times, because there are times that even in social situations, I don't I there was a Halloween party I was invited to, what was it, last weekend, and I really didn't want to go. It was a fun party, but it just took all my energy to go. Once I was there, I had a good time, but it was getting the energy up to going, and because sometimes it's just we get into a routine, we get into a pattern that when we're home at night, most of the time it just becomes so much easier just to stay at home. Oh, I really don't want to get dressed, I really don't want to go out, I really, it but and I would say that most of you could probably raise your hand and say, yeah, I really didn't want to come out tonight, but I'm glad I did come. It was a nice time. It was a good party. It was, whatever it was, whatever you went to. It was a nice event. So you have to take those things into consideration. And I met some new people, and it was a lot of fun. And hang on one second. Addie says, good news for myself. Met a man for a drink Friday, when I when I didn't want to get out in the rain, but it went well. Plan to meet him again tomorrow. been a long time since I've done a two date. Congratulations! That's wonderful, Abby. So, you know, just take it one date at a time and go from there. That's awesome. See, folks, it doesn't have to be one and done every time. And you know you'll get those second, third, fourth dates, and you know, maybe it'll work, maybe it won't, but at least it's progressing in the right direction. And then you're going to swing back into several more with one and dones, because there's just no connection. There may be a lot of commonality on paper, but it's you know, there's something missing. You know, whether it's a chemistry factor, or whether it's um, you know, whether a deal breaker pops up, or you discover they don't have all of your must-haves. You know, whatever it is. You know, it's a process, and to be a superstar at it, you have to have grit. You have to continue to to go after what you want. You know, because if you stop looking, you make it so much harder for your soulmate to find you. You know, because you know, and one of the things that so many of you forget is that when you're you know, we're all focused on finding our soulmate, but remember, our soulmate is focused on finding us. So it's going both ways. And when you stop looking, or give up looking, you're making it just that much tougher, because there's somebody out there looking for you. And you got to be there. You got to be out there. You got to be doing the work. You've got to be social. You've got to be going on dates. And one of the things, and the more often you date, the sooner you're going to find your soulmate. You know, if you can do one date a week with somebody new, you're doing probably 80 to 90% better than most singles. You know, there's a few that are going on date after date after date, but those are very few and far between. I would bet most of you have rarely go on more than one date a month. You know, and I may be wrong. You know, if some of you are doing more than one date a month, you know, shout out and let me know. You know, I'll give you a plug. You know, if you're doing two dates a month, you know, but ideally, uh, you should be going out on one date a week if you're serious about finding your soulmate. It takes time, and you have to meet people. It means being out and being social. It means being seen. It means letting people know that you're single and looking. You know, it doesn't. It's you know, the one response that I love, and I've heard this so many times, is that God will bring the right man to me, or God will bring the right woman to me, and they sit at home. Well, the only way for you to find your soulmate that way is for it to be the mailman, the UPS man, or the cable guy. You know, it just it you have to put in effort, and it's not always fun. It's not always easy, but it is simple. And that's why I named my course Dating Made Simple. You know, is to simplify all of the activities that you need to do, all of the steps, and it's a process. It's a process of getting your mind right, you know, before you date. It's a process of knowing what you want, and knowing what your deal breakers are, knowing what you don't want in your next relationship. It's about understanding all of the moving parts. You know, and I say they're moving parts, but it's developing intellectual, a spiritual, an emotional, and a physical connection. It's about speaking similar love languages. It's about chemistry. You know, all these things have to come together to create an extraordinary relationship. And even really good relationships can feel really comfortable, but when you start to see that there's something missing or that there are differences, it's time to move on. If you're truly looking for that that extraordinary relationship or your soulmate, it's something that we have to keep pushing through, and it just takes time. It's not like dating in your late teens and early 20s. Back then you didn't know what you wanted. More than likely looks were a major factor in what you were looking for in a relationship. Beyond that, yeah, if he had a job or she had a job or she made you laugh or he made you laugh, those were some of the basics, some of the fundamentals of dating back then. If you had some things in common, even better. But back then we just didn't know. And in 20, 30, 40 years of life experiences, you've developed some likes and dislikes. You've developed standards for what you want in your next relationship, and that's okay. We've all had experiences. We've all learned from things. My ex had some really great qualities, but then she also had some qualities that made me crazy. And I'm sure that all of you have been in the same place. So those experiences, people that you've dated, think there may be some things that they've done that you thought, oh my gosh, I want this in my next relationship. But there are other parts of them that said, but he's not the one or she's not the one. We've all been there, and we've all gone through those experiences. But we have to realize that with our life experiences, each time we have another experience, the bar gets raised a little higher and a little higher and a little higher. So it takes more effort to find your soulmate or your extraordinary relationship today. It's just the way it is. And you have to understand that it's not like dating back in high school where you could date half a dozen people and you got married. It's just not going to be that way. I mean, unless you're one of the 1 or 2% that magically falls into that category that you just magically found each other. For most of us, that's not the way it's going to happen. We have to work at it. I have to work at it. So anyway, with that, we'll wrap it up unless you have any more comments or questions. Next week I will be in Memphis, and then the following week I'm not sure where I'll be. And then somewhere in there is Thanksgiving, and we're starting to get into the holiday season, so there's probably a couple of days that we may miss in the next couple of months. But for right now, Memphis is my next destination, and I hope you all have a great and blessed week, and even a great weekend next weekend. And I will see you on Monday for Monday Mastery, and we'll be live at 6 Central. And I hope you get caught up from the time change. I know it always screws with me. So hopefully by then we'll all be a little more awake, and I'll see you next week. Love you guys. Thanks, Addie. We'll see you all. We'll see you all next Monday.